Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of CHR's Real Life, Real Hope podcast. I'm Maureen McGuire, Senior Vice President for Advancement at Community Health Resources, CHR. And today we're joined by Jordan Goldberg, who is a substance abuse counselor with CHR. And Jordan's going to share his personal journey to recovery and along with a description of his work today at CHR. So welcome, Jordan.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to come on.
You're listening to the Real Life, Real Hope podcast, brought to you by CHR.
So let's start by hearing about, your personal story, your journey to recovery.
So I've probably told my story 100 times. And every time it's a little different, but I always kind of start with, I am the opioid epidemic, but I am recovery from the opioid epidemic now. So my childhood, I saw a lot of high functioning addiction. People went to work, people went to school, they just drank and partied on the weekends. And I always tell folks, I didn't see anyone go to jail. I saw people pass away. So it was kind of, unfortunately, a normal topic that my parents tried to hide me from, but eventually you see things and you notice things. They tried to stay away from that side of the family, but it comes in and you see things as you go along. And then my first drink and drug, I was 10, introduced from a relative. So again, that normalcy of, oh, this is just what we do. So as I got older and you're in high school and there's stress and you don't quite fit in and you don't know yourself that well, drugs were an easy thing to get for me. They made my inhibitions go away. They made me more popular. They did all the things they were supposed to do in the short term. The long term turned into a 15, 16-year straight run on opiates and kind of everything else, but opiates was the primary substance every day, one way or another. I got it every single day. And then somewhere along the line, I got an infection in my leg, and it was something I'm still dealing with in recovery almost 6 years later. And I was talking to someone at my work. He actually introduced me to CHR, and I am forever grateful because he was already coming as a client and, had the courage to come tell me what he was seeing as a person in recovery himself. And now that I'm a person in recovery, you see the little signs. No matter how well I thought I was hiding it, the progressive incompetency at work and the just missing days and hospital stays and all the things that he saw from his perspective and worldview. The part I didn't mention is I was actually his boss. So courage it took for him to come say something. Wow. I just can't imagine I don't like to imagine what my life would have looked like if he didn't come talk to me that day. Anyway, it's back in June of 2018, he gave me the number of CHR Manchester, and I sat with it on my phone, ready to hit send for 6 or 7 weeks every day before work. I was the definition of, pre-contemplative for a very long time, and then contemplative for those 7. I just sat there, and every day before work, I wanted to hit send, and that phone anxiety, something wouldn't let me do it. And then again, his courage came and asked me when I was going, when my first appointment was. And I always thought I was a good liar, and he caught me. Right away, he didn't buy into what I was trying to sell, and he goes, "You're going to come with me tomorrow." And it happened to be a Tuesday. He went on Wednesday. Back then, that's when they did the Suboxone group, and you met with the doctor, and you did all that stuff. And they also did intakes on Wednesday mornings. So what he had to do, I sat and waited for an intake, which felt like the longest, half an hour of my life. Yeah. Because I was finally going to be honest with somebody, or try to be honest with somebody as much as I could. because there's a lot of shame and there's a lot of stigma and there's all those things. And I was, quote unquote, high functioning. I had this reputation, and a lot of my story involves other people. And I don't like to, I don't want to talk about their issues and how, put blame on them, because it isn't. But there's some very intertwined family dynamics that were playing a role. And, I was ashamed of that. And there were just so many things. So I tell people my recovery date is July of 2018, right? I didn't get sober that day. The psychiatrist I needed at the time, a very hard-nosed, didn't buy into any of the BS that I was trying to sell her. It just wasn't a linear path to getting sober. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, about 4 months in, it sounds kind of cliche, but I was sitting at a stop sign, and I'd had a couple drinks, and I could have gone left to Hartford and go try to find my drug of choice, or I could have went right and gone home. And something in me pulled me right to go home. And that day on, I decided my recovery needed to be sobriety, because I can't drive the Ferrari 30 miles an hour. I do something a little bit, I want to do it a lot. That's part of my disease. Mm-hmm. I do the same thing now with good things, right? But it's just something I had to become aware of. And that right turn in deciding I wanted to be sober was the best decision I ever made, right? And I was living in Manchester till about a month ago, and I would drive by that stop sign every once in a while because it's just a random stop sign. And it sends chills down my spine, because it could have went the other way. It's super easily. I mean, one bad choice today could lead to bad things, but one bad choice back then, I don't know what would happen. So it's been a incredibly fulfilling and meaningful 5+ years. I'm sitting here with you. Doing this interview, I couldn't have imagined back then, because I couldn't see life differently than it was for a really, really long time. I came to terms with that was how my life was going to be, and it was going to end where it was going to end. And
you just couldn't imagine a different life.
Yeah. And the people around me wouldn't let me stay stuck in that, right? Because I was questioning, why am I doing this? It's just going to end up where everything I saw ended up anyway. I had this anger and this chip on my shoulder, and everyone had to feel bad for me because, I hurt my back and was put on opiate pain medication. And it wasn't my fault. And all those justifications I told myself for a really long time, which when I got honest with myself were just the lies my disease told me, because it started way before I got hurt, way before I was put on opiate pain medication from a doctor. It started probably when I was 10 years old and had that first beer and a joint, right? And this is going to be a constant for the rest of my life journey to figure out self, to not go back to where I was. And so far, that's just kind of the truth I tell myself, that this wasn't anyone else's fault. This was a whole bunch of bad choices on my part, but that empowers me, because now I can make good choices, right? If I had that much power to make those bad choices, now I can make good choices. I've just strung a lot of good choices together over the past, 5.5 years. So, it's just been really, really a meaningful journey of recovery after a pretty miserable 15 years.
Wow. And so how did your career at CHR, how did you make the transition? You were a client in Manchester.
So COVID happened, which most people say it was terrible. It was tragic. There's all the bad that came with it. For me, it was the best time, really the best transition I could have asked for. It forced me to transition out of the restaurant industry that I was in for my whole adult life. Went to culinary school, did all that, ran, some higher end restaurants and worked in bar, really did everything. And when you're working 100+ hours a week, there's no way out. You can't go to school. You can't go to training. You can't there's just not enough time because you're either working 2 jobs because you're not making that much money, or you're working 1 job and making good money, but you're working 80, 100 plus hours a week, right? So COVID stopped all that for me. Actually, March 16th, 2020. And working with, just talking one day. At that time, we were doing telehealth. Like, we had transitioned from the weekly Suboxone group to telehealth. I was just venting to the RSS that I worked with from day one and just talking about, I want to do something else. I was kind of coming out of that pink cloud first year of sobriety and really starting to look at my life and not really liking where I was and dreading, I was sober, but I wasn't in recovery yet, to me, because I was dreading when COVID was over and I was going to have to go back in kitchens.
Right.
Because it was really scary to me because that was chaos. It was acceptable to a point to do what I was doing. And so I was very fearful I was going to return to my old behaviors, going back in and all that. So she recommended to me to take one of the CCAR trainings. And it was just give it a try. It's something to do. You're sitting home anyway type of conversation. I did. I was the first online class that they ever did because they transitioned to a virtual platform. And I started with their Recovery Coach Academy, did the Hartford Healthcare Recovery Leadership Academy, and really since then have not stopped going to school. So we turned that into going and completing my bachelor's to now I'm a master's / PhD program. Like, there's another 7 to 9 years of school ahead of me. And I screwed school up the first time around pretty bad, like, college. And so that, what I was saying earlier about the obsession with me about taking everything to the fullest I could, now I put towards good things. So it's just been a progression that started with, just an innocent conversation that now in my role and when I was in my previous roles, we have those conversations with folks about, why don't you do this training, see how it goes for you? And I'd say 9.5 out of 10 times it doesn't go anywhere. It's just people take the training and they do what they want with it and whatever. So I'm sure she had that conversation with a whole bunch of other folks and it just hit with me. And I'm very clinical minded, come to find out. Like, AA didn't work for me. NA wasn't, those type of things weren't going to work for me because it was very abstract. You couldn't touch it. There wasn't an answer. It was more of a question than an answer. The Recovery Coach Academy and the Recovery Leadership Academy gave me the first real glimpse behind what my disease was from like a biological, psychosocial place. And somewhere it clicked with me. And I've just been fascinated with learning as much as I can about the disease from every angle. And I've done this very differently than other folks in the field as far as I understood it. I lived it pretty much my whole life. And now I'm learning about it and now I know it, right? So most people go from knowing to hopefully understanding someday, even though I don't think unless you've gone through it, you can really completely understand it. But you get close, I think. I'm going the complete other way where during that Recovery Coach Academy, I go, oh, that's what was going on, or that's why, I was saying this or doing that or felt this way or whatever. And it's made me understand me more in that constant journey of self to hopefully figure out and make myself better, right? So I believe you have to understand your enemy to kind of defeat it. So that was the first glimpse into that. So I'm in a very odd way thankful for COVID, which I know is not something most people say. I was very lucky through as far as not getting sick and my family and all that. So I'm sure my perspective would be very different if that did happen. But it was with me there in my recovery, there haven't been like little gradual things. It's been like these massive, big, like total right turns everywhere that it can happen. And that was probably the biggest one of them was when we went on lockdown. And
now that you've gone through trainings and you're still in school, how do you, and you're working now with individuals who are seeking care at CHR, how do you use your lived experience to help the people that that you're working with?
When I was in the RSS role, it's very expected, right? We want to stay in our lane. We don't quite understand, just because of the training, right? We don't quite understand everything. And so it really is like experience based. I've been kind of where you are, and I get what you're feeling. And the biggest thing now is when I meet folks and it's their first day and coming into, I work in more of our opioid treatment program, so a methadone clinic, is the most scary, humbling, but can be meaningful day in someone's life, right? Mm-hmm. And so you see that written all over their face, all over their body language. It's a scary thing. It's finally kind of giving up your will that, you need help. And it's really, really hard for folks that are ingrained never to ask for help and think we got it and all that. So I take my counselor hat off and I just give them comfort that I was not the exact same chair, but literally had the same conversation at some point 5 years ago. And if they can continuously look for their pathway, because it's different for everyone, they can have a meaningful, incredibly rewarding life. It's not easy, right? And so I think some of the times we promote recovery and we encourage folks and we forget how hard this is going to be. And so acknowledging to folks, like I've gone through opioid withdrawal more time than I could ever try to count. I've been, I've made mistakes. I've done all these things. I carry this, I carried toxic guilt for a long time. All that stuff. And yet I still was able to do it. And I think, hope is the most important thing. I wasn't going to have it if that gentleman that worked for me didn't have a conversation with me. I wasn't going to have it unless the RSS I worked with gave it to me, right? So it's like that's the thing we can pass on is our hope of things can just get better. And if you just do something every day for your recovery, it's going to be better every day, right? And it's been a really powerful tool to, be able to, again, that understanding piece of telling people the amount of work they're going to have to put in for that first couple years, and then break it down to, the neuroplasticity and all those little things that are happening in your brain, and you see it click with folks. And then when I see it click with them, I go, that's what helped me too. Somewhere along the line, it clicks and you get power over this thing that you don't understand, because I don't understand, because we're never going to understand it. And that's okay, right? And I've had a lot of folks that work with other clinicians just want to come over and talk about, hey, when you were going through this, because I don't keep it a secret at work. I don't advertise it anymore like I did when I was in my old role, but everyone kind of knows that if someone asks, I don't not tell them I'm in recovery. And whatever questions they might have about my recovery, I'm very open about, to a point, which I know goes against the grain of what most counselors and therapists do. But I think if you do it in a way that's still tactful and professional and keeps that boundary, like it's the most powerful thing. So I have, clients come over from other clinicians go, they just don't understand me. They don't get there's not going to be a coping skill that's going to make me feel better when I'm dope sick. You're right. So why don't we go have a conversation with them? And you can, and I can kind of be that translator almost, because I still, that part of me is never going to completely go away.
Right.
So some of the lingo, some of the slang, some of the just stuff helps me meet people where they're at and, not over clinical them, because that can feel like school and you don't want,
right.
At least I found I never wanted that, but I wanted all the information. So if you can bring it up in a way through a story to break down that wall, to have an antidote, that I'm very big into antidotes, like to explain it in a way that goes, oh, that makes sense. Like,
right.
Because I think our job as professionals, part of it is we go to school, we read all these long research papers, or we learn all these things, and then we digest it and we break it down to a way that our clients can understand. Whatever that is. I have a client that has his PhD. Like, he's more educated than I am. So I can use different words with him than I can with someone that might only have a 10th grade education. Right. But, and everything in between. And it's made it very palpable for clients to, not feel like they're being lectured to,
right.
that they're being guided. Right. And I think it's a a big difference.
There are days that are hard for you, though, with, you're listening to people, there's got to be, how do you cope with things like burnout? And
yeah, I've been very lucky so far. It's been about 3 years, and before I was in the OTP, I was on ACT, so another really high needs population. And I think my life experience, I'm hoping, because I do a lot of things outside of hobbies and activities and all this stuff, it just kind of keeps that flame going. But it always, on those days when it gets tough, on the days when we find out that we lost a client, on the days that, you're watching, some really hard stuff happen to people, or they're telling you some trauma that happened to them, or some adverse event that happened when they were kids. And some of this stuff's really hard, for sure. And then when I meet work with someone who's went through some of the same things and, had a really bad addiction, and maybe they were homeless, or maybe, some really bad stuff happened, prison, whatever, and work with them for a couple years, and you ask them if they're happy now because they're sober, and they look you dead in the face and say yes and thank you. Like, it's now I'm getting emotional. Like right now, I'm emotional about it. And we can't win every battle, unfortunately. So it's focusing on those ones, and then having the support of a good team to debrief with, to go through things with, to talk about things, to whatever. But also knowing, because of my own experience, like what I do matters every day. And somewhere along the lines, I was talking to my supervisor about this last week or the week before. I used to judge a good day by, I help someone get the level of care they need. I helped motivate them to make a change in their life. I helped, something, a tangible, like, this is what I did today. And somewhere along the line, it changed to, a good day is when a client is comfortable enough to talk to me about something they've never talked to anyone about. And they say, wow, I just feel better getting that off my chest. And they might go do what they're going to do anyway. And things are going to play out the way they're going to play out. And they have choices and autonomy and all that. But building those connections and just knowing that I can be, or our team can be, the safe place in the world for somebody. When we get new staff at Pathways, we have the conversation with them that we have the opportunity and we have the privilege to be nice to people that probably aren't going to be spoken to nicely all day. They're probably having a pretty rough day, and they're going to have one when they leave, and they had one before they came in, and they're judged, and there's all these things going on. And just saying hello and asking them how they are, it makes their day, or it can make their day.
It can be very powerful.
Or it can save their life, because they've been waiting for someone to ask them and be genuine and compassionate and empathetic, because something's going on or something happened. So we have that. I really do think it's a privilege, to work with folks that deal with some things that really, before I started this work, like, I had been through some stuff. I had seen some things that I had no business seeing as a I'll just be frank, as a white kid from an upper middle class Jewish house. I had no reason to be in some of the neighborhoods I was in or see some of the things I saw. But some of the things that our clients go through are just heartbreaking. But when you've built that connection that they can talk about it, and they laugh or they smile or they come in, and I have kind of a knack of, someone can come in crying and my goal is to get them to leave my office laughing. And that's a really powerful thing to me, that when we have those bad days, I can fall back on, or when we have those stressful days, or treatment plans are due, or all the things that we deal with on a daily basis as employees here, knowing you just made a difference for, even if it's 5 minutes. It's really rewarding when you've worked with someone a year ago or 18 months ago, and they just stop by and say hi or say thank you, or whatever. And they're still doing well. Even if they're not doing well, they know there's a safe place for them to come talk and whatever. But somewhere where that shift happened, where I didn't need a tangible, this is what I did today, right? Because in the restaurant industry, it was, you had to go tell your boss, you had a prep list and you had to do it, and like, it had to be visible and someone had to touch it and taste it and all that stuff. So I carried that with me into this profession, and no one ever asked. It wasn't like my supervisor was like, what did you do today? Or
Right.
what did you accomplish or whatever? So it was pressure I put on myself to do something. And when I let that go, I think I actually got more effective at the job because I wasn't trying to motivate someone to do something to appease me, to make a change so I could go, okay, they made a change today. That's good. So almost taking that step back I wish I knew when that shift happened. But wherever it did along the line, it was really a good thing that, made me realize even more what we do is really important.
Absolutely. We talked a little bit before we started taping the segment about the rise in the use of fentanyl and how scary things are. For anyone who's out there right now who hears this, who's struggling or knows of someone who's struggling, what advice do you have?
Well, that recovery is possible. Like, that's just my number one, because I didn't think I could. I never thought I'd be here with you, we were saying, or any of the things I've done or accomplished or even have an idea for the future. Like, I have, 5-year, 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, the rest of my life plans. When I was actively using it was, what am I doing in 10 minutes? And I'm probably going to not be here when I'm 30. And then when I turned 30, had a plan to not be here when I was 31, right? Like all those steps, and then finding hope, right? So it is possible, right? And recovery looks like what you want it to look like, right? So we've shifted part of my fear was someone was going to tell me what I had to do. And to an extent, they did. But it was, here are the 3 things you have to do, right? So I still had some choice. I still had some autonomy, and the way forced me to go at AA or NA or forced me to do this or that. So if someone's listening to this and needs to hear it, like, we follow your lead. We guide you like you came to a new town, and we're going to show you all the things. And then when you want to go back to it, we're going to go back with you, right? I've learned through my recovery, pain is a part of life, whether it be physical, emotional, spiritual. Like, pain is something we all deal with, but you can stop the suffering. It might have started out fun. It might have started out as a party. It might have started out cool. You got those short-term benefits from drugs and alcohol, especially fentanyl now. You're trapped by it unless you ask for help in most cases. And so you can stop the suffering, the daily grind that you're going through, and the 24/7 job that addiction becomes at some point, especially with opiates. And there is help out there, and it's not all a stuffy doctor in an office that's going to talk to you in words that you don't know and treat you like you're stupid or stigmatize you, or all the fears that I had before I walked in for services. I think our team, at CHR, we're pretty down to earth. I've never met anyone that's not,
Right.
or at least has a good sense of humor about everything. Or, we have to have some professionalism, of course, all the time. But it's not, at least what I envisioned it was going to be. So it's, just walk in, ask for help, give it a shot. You have nothing to lose. If you're at the point where you need help, you have nowhere to go but up, right? And someone said to me, and I've stolen it, your rock bottom is just when you start going the other way, right? You don't have to. I've met a lot of folks that will tell you, well, it's like a kid, they call it in like the fellowships, the yets, right? This hasn't happened yet, or right?
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for that to happen to justify needing help, right? It's so different now, especially with fentanyl, especially with the overdoses, and now you have xylazine coming into everything, and all these other drugs in the past few years that weren't out there when I was. And I'm thankful for that. We have ways to help treat all those things now. They're having again those research papers that we're all reading and the stuff that we're all learning about. All you have to know is, here, if you take this, it's going to help you, or having this conversation is going to help you, or but you don't have to know all that stuff. But there is help for really everything. And no matter what your goal is, I think that's the biggest thing. Again, also something I was afraid of, that someone was going to tell me what my recovery had to look like. And I bring it up all the time that, it's a question that I was actually never asked back in the day, was, what do you want? And so now I've introduced that into when I meet folks. And some of the stuff is really simple. I just want to be a better father, mother, son, daughter, whatever. Some of the stuff is really complex, but it's what you want. Again, that like showing you around the town to help you get there. But no one's going to dictate onto you what things have to be, right? So, kind of come have a conversation with somebody. Like, we're not all scary, and you might have a good day out of it, and you might be able to end the suffering and deal with some of the stuff that's going on, but just knowing, again, that there's hope out there and things do get better, for sure.
So when we look at the Pathways programs and other programs at CHR that are helping people with opioid use disorder and other substance use disorders, I know we have openings. Who would you describe as like the ideal candidate for one of these jobs?
Yeah, so one of my biggest things is that empathy and compassion piece, but not sympathy, right? And so if somebody was sympathetic to me, it's almost like you're downgrading my experience. You're treating me like a child, right? So if you can be just an empathetic person and have compassion for what just another human being's going through, right? One of the things we do at Pathways that I am immensely proud of is our harm reduction program, our Neal exchange that I believe last count, we've done almost 30,000 Neal exchanges. Yeah, so that's 30,000 Neals that aren't in Enfield or Hartford or on a playground, and it means that 30,000 times at least someone has used a clean Neal, which is protecting them from Hep C and HIV and all the other stuff as much as possible. Right, so if you can just have, one of the things that comes up with that is the idea of like why we're doing it. Or I've had parents call and be very angry that their child told them that they got Neals from Jordan at CHR, right? And the answer is always, well, can you treat them as a human? Can you put a seatbelt on your child while they're in the car? It's the same thing, right? So just treating someone like a person, having that empathy and that compassion for their experience from their perspective and their worldview and what they've been through and not what you've been through and your expectations, that's the type of person that I would personally want. That stays away from the sympathetic babying or we're broken, right? We're definitely not, right? There is so much talent and knowledge and just wonderful people that we work with, and they have this one problem, right? So if you can see people as a whole person and not just what they're dealing with, right? If you speak in a way where it's a person with or a person dealing with rather than a drug addict, right? Or a junkie or whatever. If you're a person where in your mind the word person or people comes up first, like that's someone I want to work with. We can teach you everything else, right? You can either go to school and learn it, or if you have gone to school and you went for one thing and you end up in a program that's completely different than what you went to school for. If you have those qualities, there's such good people at CHR and such well-educated people, either from experience or school themselves. Like we can teach anything. And for someone that's been in school nonstop for the past 3 years, I've learned more on the job and working with the doctors and the nurses and people that have a lot more experience than me. And I'm lucky enough to work under someone that's been at CHR for 35 years. That's kind of seen everything, so you can throw an idea at her and you learn every time you talk to her, right? So if you can be just that empathetic, compassionate person, like put your application in and come give this a shot. Like we really do help a lot of people every single day. Like since I've been here in 2018 as a client, like the growth of CHR, I could think it was just Manchester and Enfield and very small, and now we're everywhere across the state, and we're in the DOC programs, and those programs are amazing. Like talk about people that aren't treated as people for the first time being treated like people. Like they'll be in DOC and then they'll come to Pathways afterwards. They transition or warm handoff into us, and they can't talk enough about how much it's meant to their lives and their families that we just offer those programs. Whatever they do when they get out is their business and their choice, but just that there was someone to talk to, about, maybe it's just about sports, maybe it's about whatever, but that they had somebody that was just nice to them. Again, those, so I know we do need more people like that, just in general in this field. And also just my plea to any guys out there, because it's a very woman-dominated field, which is a bad thing. It's funny, in school I have 35 people in my cohort that's going through, and there's 2 guys, right?
Wow.
So it's like, and that's female perspectives are wonderful and all that, but there's some things only guys can talk to guys about, and there's only some things women can talk to women about.
Right.
So, for anyone that's out there that has those qualities, and really just wants to help people, and, I tell my family all the time that if I can put my head on the pillow at night and know I helped one person in one little thing, like, it was a good day, and I get to do that. And then just to see what other people are doing too, and all the kind of tentacles CHR has, and all the different programs and opportunities there are here, right? Like, I had a career that didn't have a ton of opportunities. I could have kept moving around and all that, but going back to school and having conversations with folks, like, there's a rest of my career here if I want it to be, and things line up, right? So it's definitely a career with a future too, with really supportive folks that get to do cool stuff too. Like we do. I met the governor. I've had conversations with congressmen. Like, there's all these cool opportunities just to meet really interesting people too. Great.
Sounds great. So people can go to the website, chrhealth.org/careers. Join our team.
One of the important things too is, I think when you get out of school, you have these student loans, you have these debts, you look at where can I get the most money? And you can go make money. You could do private, for the therapists and the licensed folks, you can do Better Health, and you can do all those type of things. But there's so much reward here. For whatever reason, I see people leave CHR, and I've only ever worked here, and they come back. And sometimes they come back for lesser positions. And at first I questioned that. It's like, why would you do that? And then the more I've looked around and the more I've kind of just talked to people in the field, it's, they don't have those same supports. They don't have the same, we were talking off camera about nothing here is gray. You don't have to guess. You know what your job is. And that starts from the top down, and it's very black and white, and in a way it's very easy to come to work when you know what your job is. If you have a question, there's a very definitive answer. So the leadership here, and this isn't me just saying this because we're in the building, like, is very, very concerned with us all having that structure and having that work-life balance, and, being able to get support. When I was going through some personal stuff, it's, folks that I had never really met reached out and were just like, if you need time off, like, take time off, do what you have to do, take care of your family. And then when good things were happening in my life recently, I got a ton of support with that and just guidance. And, there's just some untangible things that don't always come down to money, right? I've been offered jobs or consulting that is a little bit more money, and I turn it down before they get the words out of their mouth because I don't want to leave, right? And I can't articulate 100% why that is, but there's something here. And at first I thought it was I had to pay back what was given to me from CHR, and somewhere that went away too. Like, somewhere I was like, I've done what I need to do. Now I want to stay, because that is why I, when I first started in this field, that was why I wanted to work at CHR, was because I saw what they did. They gave something to me that I couldn't give myself, so I wanted to give that back. But somewhere along the line, I realized I paid that debt, and I want to be here more than I wanted to previously. And the more involved I get in things, and I've learned so much about, like, the DE&I. Like, I didn't know what that was, and we keep learning about that.
Right.
And it just opens your mind to things. The trainings that were offered and the educational stuff that we have and the structure, and there's just a lot of things, again, that aren't tangible. So not looking just at that financial piece. Like, we're all going to make money in our lives. We're going to be fine at, if you're smart with it.
Right.
And here, we have someone that can help you invest and do things, right? So there are a lot of benefits where I really hope people don't just get out of school and look at the dollar signs.
Right.
Because it's a really short-lived thing, to me anyway.
Yeah, it's not the whole picture. Jordan, thank you so much for sharing your story and for all the work you're doing for men and women in our community every day.
Oh, thank you.
This podcast is brought to you proudly by CHR, where real life meets real hope. Visit chrhealth.org to explore resources and services. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate and review and join the conversation on social media.